Morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for Roadmap to College, what students should do each year of high school to stand out. Today, we are joined by Anne Dolan. Anne is a former public school teacher and author who founded Educational Connections in 1998. The company specializes in helping students build executive function, skills, and study habits to perform better in school and ultimately in college. She and her team of more than 120 tutors, executive function coaches, college consultants, and parent coaches provide virtual support uh, to families with kindergarten to college age students throughout the country. And is an advocate for students with ADHD and other learning differences. Please take it away, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Amal. It's such a pleasure to be here with you and all of the parents. You know, for the last 27 years, as you mentioned, I've been the owner and operator of Educational Connections, and prior to that, I was a special ed teacher with Fairfax County Public Schools. And a lot has changed, certainly in K-12 education, but even more has changed when it comes to college admissions. Every day, parents call our office and they're looking for help to navigate the entire process. And it's something that we do, not just helping students put their best foot forward, but also reducing stress along the way. And Amal, I mentioned to you before we got started that I've been doing webinars in person and virtually for Fairfax County for about 15 years. But today is the first day that I've actually had a guest with me. So Brene, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here with me.
Thanks so much, Anne. I'm really excited to be here today.
Awesome. So let me tell you all a little bit about Renee. She's a college consultant here with me at Educational Connections. And prior to that, she worked in admissions for 28 years. Lastly, as the former Senior Associate Director of Admissions at Rochester Institute of Technology. And so she really knows from the other side of the table what admissions officers are looking for when they say, yes, you're in. Because all this time she's been reviewing student applications locally, also international applicants, and she knows what it takes. So Renee, let's get started and let's talk a little bit about the current landscape in admissions. What are the trends?
Sure. There are a lot of different things happening in college admissions right now, and there's a lot of conversations about many different topics. So I want to talk through just a few of them today and give you a couple highlights on what has changed in the last couple of years. So we are seeing an increase in the number of applications that each school is receiving. Students are tending to apply to more colleges due to the ease of online applications and also changes in testing policies, as a lot of schools went to test optional during COVID. We are seeing a return to some testing requirements, which we'll talk about a little bit later on as well. This increase in applications has led to some lower acceptance rates, especially at selective schools. But it's important to know that there are still some amazing schools out there, and there's a college out there for everyone. So one of the things that I'd like to do is help students navigate that and find the right school for them. As I mentioned, we also are seeing the importance of test scores kind of changing over the past few years. Many schools went test optional for a while, and we're seeing some of them return to test scores required. So we really like to have a lot of conversations with students about the schools on their list and try to navigate all of those testing decisions. And as I mentioned, we will lean into this a little bit farther into our presentation as well. We have seen a rise in the interest of public schools over private schools. Many families are prioritizing the cost of schools and return on investment. So we do see an increase in some interest in public universities. And one of the biggest changes we've seen in admissions is how the use of early admission has changed. Applying early decision or early action to schools is really the new norm, as opposed to applying as a regular decision student. Early decision is binding. You can only apply to one school as an early decision student, so that limits flexibility. But for most schools, early action plans have earlier deadlines, but they're not that binding nature. So many students are applying through early action now as well. And then the last topic, I think, is a topic about everything right now, the rise in AI and how it is affecting college admissions. Colleges are increasingly using AI in the early stages of their application review to do some screening or sorting by GPA, or to see how students, what classes they have taken. So this, on the application side, just means the students really need to submit some clear, focused, and well-written applications. And then, of course, I have a lot of conversations with students as well about the use of AI in their applications and their essays, and how to navigate that and how and when to use that. So a lot of conversations happening about many different things in admissions right now.
Yeah, as I mentioned, so much has changed, even just in the last 2 years. It's really amazing.
Absolutely.
So one thing that parents sometimes worry about is, what if their child doesn't have the world's best grades, or maybe their test scores aren't fabulous, but they're still a really great kid, and they're a perfectly smart kid. And so that's where the holistic review process comes in, and why it can benefit many of our kids. Tell us a little bit about it.
So I personally love the holistic review process. It really is when an admissions office considers the whole person, not just their academic metrics like their GPA and their test scores. The goal is to really understand the applicant's character, their potential, their unique experiences, and what they might contribute to the campus if they do enroll there. So the question comes, okay, if they're considering things outside of academics, what are they considering? So this is when an admissions office will also lean heavily on essays, letters of recommendation, extracurricular activities, what type of leadership roles has the student taken, work experiences, volunteer experiences, how they've contributed to their community. And the other one that they take into consideration is personal background and life changes. And that is especially helpful for some students who may have been diagnosed with learning differences maybe later on, or had some other things that may have impacted their schoolwork. When you're looking at a school that uses holistic admissions, they consider all of these things when making an admission decision.
Renee, do most schools offer this review process, or are they really at first looking at, okay, what's your GPA and what are your test scores?
The majority of schools do offer holistic admission processes. Some of the very selective schools do not, but the vast majority of moderately selective schools do consider students holistically.
That's super helpful. Thank you, Renee. All right, so we mentioned that you were in admissions for a long time, as well as everybody on our team. That's what I love about our group, is that all of our college consultants have worked on the other side of the table, and they know what it takes to get kids into schools. So what really is that? What do colleges want to see?
Sure. I really like this chart because I think it really lays a great foundation for what colleges are looking at. Of course, your grades and the rigor of your program are at the bottom. That's the foundation. Have you shown academically that you can be successful in the program at college? It's not just the grades, how high is your GPA, but it's also what classes and courses have you taken, and have you challenged yourself? They're looking for students to take advanced courses if they can, honors, AP, IB, dual enrollment. They're wanting students to have academic drive and show college readiness. So I do get a lot of questions about students saying, well, what level should I take? What is the right level to take? And so my recommendation is always to take the highest level class you can that you can still do well in. So you don't want to enroll in an AP class and get a C or a D, but you do want to take advanced classes if they're available to you and you feel that you have the foundation academically to do well in that class. The second section is community contribution and depth of engagement. So this is where I'm saying, like, now we're moving into the holistic review. The colleges are increasingly looking at this type of information, looking to admit the whole student, the whole person, not just the academic student. So we want to talk about how to impact, what to do. I usually tell students depth over breadth. So I would rather them pick 3 to 5 things that they really get involved in rather than doing 15 different activities. I also encourage students to take on leadership roles in that. So once you've been involved in something, maybe take on a leadership role or try to take a higher level position or recruit new members to the organization that you're in. And then, of course, community engagement. I will strongly encourage any student that I'm working with to do volunteer work, get active in their community, help with their family or their neighbors. This really shows empathy and initiative, and that they're also service oriented. And many colleges are looking for that and ask that specific question in their supplemental essays as well. So that helps the students have a strong answer there. And then, of course, authentic character. Every application should be coming through as authentic. And by that, I mean the student's self should shine through on that, their personality, who they are, what they care about, what's important to them. And, many times students, as they're writing their essays, they always, talk about what they should write about and what the admissions office wants to hear. And I'm like, they want to hear what you want to say. You really want to talk about what's important to the student and how to let that shine through on the application in their essays or their letter of recommendations or interviews or any time that you have interaction with an admissions office.
That's super helpful, Renee. And I know we're going to dig deeper into each one of these things, like how do you get a kid that hasn't been involved, and what
Yes.
does authentic character really look like? So we'll touch on that. So I'd love to go to really what makes kids unique, because it's super common for parents to call our office and they'll say things like, I really don't know what's unique about my child. Or we start working with the student and the student says, I'm just kind of average. But we know that is never true. That's never the case. How do you help kids figure out like what is unique and special about them, and then like really elevate their strengths?
I think about 50% of the students I work with every year say that to me. They're like, I don't know, I'm the same as everybody else. I've done the same things. I'm in the same clubs. How do you really help them shine on the application? I actually love the images in this slide because I think I have a student that I'm working with this year in every single one of these categories. I even have a student who's writing an essay about her rolling pin. So I love that.
Oh, she's a baker?
She is a baker, yes, and her grandmother passed her rolling pin down to her. And so she writes about her heritage, but it's all about the rolling pin. So yeah, really everybody has something unique about them. It could be a talent, it can be an experience they had, even a passion that they have for something. So part of my job and part of the thing I love doing when working with students is to draw that out, find their strengths so that I can help position them the best I can in the process. So we talk a lot about personal narrative in college counseling and what that means and how to package the student and the whole person and show that through the application. The first thing that I personally do when working with a student is when I meet with them, I have a whole list of questions. So the first meeting for me is really getting to know them better. I invite the parents to join that meeting as well, because sometimes the students don't always toot their own horn and share everything. So it's a little bit more of a collaborative discussion. And I typically learn so much in this first meeting. And I'm always like furiously writing notes, so I have these to draw on later on. And many, many times when we go to write the essays later on, I'll refer back to something they told me in this first meeting. So for me, it's just getting to know the student a little bit better, to talk through the things that they're excited about, they might be passionate about, or might be interested in exploring, because many times I start working with students in 8th through 10th grade, and they're coming to me with some ideas, but they haven't explored them yet. And I think we're also going to touch on that a little bit later on as well.
Yeah, for sure. Because that really brings us to the assessment, which I 100% love. Because to your point, like 50% of kids come in and say like, I'm just average. But this is really powerful because it helps figure out, where their strengths are, but also what majors and careers might align with their strengths.
Yes, absolutely. So if they're open to it, I have every single student I work with take an assessment, whether they're in eighth grade or I get them, coming in as a senior, just to make sure we're kind of, first of all, talking about how they learn best. So one of the assessments is the personality assessment. That is the one that's most helpful to me to know how to work with the student best, how they approach learning, how they like to tackle things. But we also have intelligences, learning and productivity, and skills. So those are the 4 categories of assessments. They don't take long, they're about 20 minutes each. And students actually really like these. So after they take them, we set aside a meeting together where we will go over them start to finish. And, not only do they learn something about themselves, but my favorite part is that it suggests academic majors and career paths. And it doesn't just list them out, but it provides information about, okay, I've heard of electrical engineering, but I don't actually know what that is. So it provides some wonderful descriptions, some jobs that they may find, the outlook for all of those different careers. So it really is a tool that isn't just a one-time thing. We continue to go back to that as we're exploring different majors and career paths.
Have you ever had a student come in that said, oh, I think I want to go into this? And then you give the assessment and it actually shows their strengths are in something else?
All the time, yes. Because what I find, Anne, is that students will come to me interested in a certain major, sometimes because their friends are interested in that same major. So there's this conversation of, oh, this is a popular major. And I saw this every year I worked at admissions. One year, a certain major would be hot, and then the next year, no one would be applying into it. So it's interesting to hear how these conversations between students can really impact what they're thinking about. But if there's anything in a student's life that should be unique, it's their college admission search, because their strengths and weaknesses are very different than their friends. What they want out of a school, what's important to them, may be very different than the others that they're friends with. So yes, absolutely, we come in and they take these, and that, sometimes I'll say, well, what about this major? And they might say, I've never even heard of that. And then we dive in and explore that. But of course, we want them to go into a major that they're passionate about. So it's a little bit of that balance of what are they interested in and where do their skill sets fall the best.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Renee. All right, let's shift gears for a second and go back to course selection, because you mentioned that in the beginning, that grades and the rigor of the courses, which means, like, are you in general ed? Are you in honors? Are you taking any AP or IB classes? Where does that fall in for students?
Yes. So course selection is really important and it builds on itself. So talking about course selection early on in 9th grade, 10th grade is really where I like to start if I have the opportunity to do that. There are some colleges and some majors that require specific coursework to be admitted. For example, if you're interested in engineering, you have to have completed both chemistry and physics in order to be admitted into an engineering program. So it is very important that you start talking not only about what classes you have to take before graduation, but also what level you want to take. And sometimes to take those higher level classes later on in high school, you need to take an honors or an advanced class in 9th or 10th grade. I can't tell you how many times I saw students denied from the program or the college they've been looking into because they didn't have a class that was a prerequisite. So, and these may have been students who were very strong academically. So I always want to have those conversations as early as I can. And then the last thing is that senior coursework is very important. Sometimes students feel like by the end of junior year, they're home free and they don't need to worry about senior year courses. The senior year classes are listed right on the applications. All colleges will look to see what classes you are taking that senior year. And they really set the tone for how well colleges feel you are prepared to take the next step.
Renee, another thing that's really important is teacher recommendations and also the high school resume, which isn't required, but is something that can help elevate a student's application. Tell us about these two things.
I think I'm going to start with resumes if you don't mind, because I agree. This is something that is not required, but is something I have all of my students complete, and when I'm working with them, and I'll tell you why. First of all, I like when students do something that is not required. I think if it's optional and they still choose to complete it, it shows that they're willing to take that extra step or put in that extra effort. And that kind of translates to the entire application for me. I also have students provide their resume to every teacher that they are asking to be their recommender. So by the end of their junior year, I ask students to ask their teachers to be their recommenders, and when they agree, to hand them a copy of their resume. This allows the teacher to write a much better, well-rounded recommendation because they know the student now a little bit better outside of the classroom as well. Resumes can also be submitted with college applications. They can be given to admissions representatives when you meet them at college fairs or on campus. And if you're interviewing with an admission representative, I always recommend bringing a resume as well.
Do you ever
So
get,
oh, go ahead.
I was just curious if you ever get kids that say, oh, that's not necessary, or I don't want to do a resume, or like, I'm just curious.
Usually they're pretty open to it. I usually go in and say like, and we'll talk about this later too, Anne, where I have a plan and how I lay things out and working with the students. So at a certain point, I'll just say, okay, now it's time to work on your resume. And we just dive into it. I do though have students who say, I don't have much to put on a resume. So that's probably what I hear more often, than they're not willing to do it. And so that way we sit down and talk about what they have done, how to highlight different things that they've done, even if they've taken classes or coursework in different computer languages, if they've helped out at home. So there's lots of different ways to craft a resume. It's very different than a resume for a job or employment, and a resume for a college application really highlights the student, not specifically work experience, although we can include that if they've done that as well. And then I did speak a little bit earlier about recommenders. And as I said, I ask all of my students to ask their teachers by the end of their junior year to be their recommender. And I do this for a couple of reasons. One is you want to be one of the first people to ask the teachers to be your recommenders, not one of the last people. I am also finding that a lot of teachers these days are preferring to write their recommendations over the summer when they don't have so many competing priorities of school as well. And the question of, who do I ask to be my recommender? Of course, right away, students will go to the teachers that they've done really well in their classes. But sometimes I also recommend students to ask the teachers of the classes maybe they didn't do as well in, but they worked really hard in. So maybe you didn't get your strongest grade in Algebra 2, but you went all the time for extra help. You did tutoring on the side. You did the extra work to get the extra credit. That teacher can also really speak to your resiliency and hardworking and how dedicated you are to your academics. So it really is a conversation about how to pick those recommenders and who can speak to you the best.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Renee. Like this whole time, we've kind of been talking about differentiation and also what kids do outside of the classroom. We're only at the end of October, so it feels like it's super far out to talk about summer. But when we think about, next summer and also like this school year, what are some things that kids can do to help elevate their application?
I know it is a little early to start talking about summer, isn't it? But I'm already having these conversations with students. They may not be registering or signing up or things like that for what they're doing next summer, but to have the conversations early is the important part. To start talking about what you might want to do in the summer. And there's a variety of things available. Summer classes are a great choice. These are often hosted by universities. They can be on campus. They can be online. It might be a one-day class. It might be multiple weeks. There's so many different choices available. but you can take college level courses, and sometimes you can also experience what college might be like if you choose to go live on campus during that. I had a student last year that participated in the summer program at UCLA, and she's from Virginia. And it was just such an impactful experience for her, both academically and socially. Really interesting to speak with her when she came home about experiences that she had and how she grew in different ways. When you
I was,
take, oh, go
I was
ahead.
just going to mention I remember my son's college counselor said, what if you took a local class? And he ended up taking a filmmaking class for high school students at George Mason. And he loved it. Like it was really, really great for him. And then that was something that he put on his application.
Yes.
He was applying to film studies, which he ended up not doing. He switched his major, but it was just really awesome to be with other kids from other schools and feel what it's like to be on a college campus.
I think it gives them a little bit of taste of college and what's that like. And also that excitement of taking a class that's not required, but a class that you like are excited about, and to that selection of it. And the student that most of the students I have that are taking summer classes, some know what they want to major in, but some are also using it as an exploration of different career paths or academic majors. And that's a great way to do that as well. Take one class and come back and say, I love that, or I didn't love that. And that helps you decide what path you may want to go in college.
What about online classes or classes at Nova, a local community college?
For sure, absolutely. Many students will enroll in those types of classes. One, to either get college credit for them or to do exploration. Those are all things that can be listed on your application and on your resume as well. So also a great way to build that up. So I have many students that will participate in that. The second area I'd like to talk about for summer is experiences. And this can fall under a bunch of different categories. This might be volunteering, community service. It might be independent projects or like passion projects. I had a bunch of students this summer explore different projects. I had a student who wrote a blog. I have a student who built an app. I have a student who made a film. And this might also mean like taking music classes or art classes, theater camps, lots of different opportunities here. I even had a student this summer who started his own business washing the garbage bins in his neighborhood. Just kind of put flyers out, and he wants to be an entrepreneur. So he wanted to try to start his own business, and he did amazing. So really, really interesting things that students can do. And then as well, many students will use the summer to study abroad or travel with their family. Also, lots of great opportunities to experience the world and share that as part of your application. The last category is summer jobs and internships. And, I'll tell you, Anne, many come to me and say, I want to get an internship next summer. They are traditionally very difficult for high school students to secure. Many internships will go to students who are in college, but there certainly are some out there, so we can dive into that. I encourage students to use all the contacts they can to find internships, parents, friends. Those are how you really get your foot in the door to get an internship. But summer jobs are also amazing. Sometimes I have students say to me, I haven't done anything interesting, or I don't, have any extracurricular activities. I've just worked at our pizza shop down the corner. But that is an amazing activity to share on your application. It shows dedication. It shows time management skills, customer service, all those things you can grow in a part-time job. So I highly recommend those as well.
What about just, say you're the oldest kid and you're watching your younger siblings?
Yes, for sure. This year on the Common App, for the first time, they have a family responsibility section. They actually added that in because so many students were indicating that in the activities section of their application. So you can add that in now, whether you are babysitting. I find a lot of students are tutoring their younger siblings or their cousins. So there's absolutely family responsibilities that can be added on as well.
All right, so let's get to the college essay. tell us what really makes kids stand out.
You know, this is my favorite part. I love the college
know.
essay. And I can't tell you how many I've just finished up reading this fall. So the essay for me is my favorite place because it really is this opportunity for the students to shine, to say who they are, or what they want to become. And the topics can be pretty much anything. And that really allows the students to express who they are, what's important to them, what they can bring to campus. So when I'm working with students, I typically tell them that the college essay, the personal statement, the main one, should be 20% about what happened and 80% about why it was important to you, why it mattered, how it changed your perspective, what you learned from it. That's what they're looking to hear. And as a past college admissions person, I have probably read, I think this is a low number, but 25 to 30,000 college essays in my time. So I have read,
oh my gosh, that's insane.
I've read a lot of college essays. So when I read an application, and I can't say this is true of all admissions officers, but this is the way I was taught to read. So I know that many do. I would look at the application first, and I would look at the activities, and then I would read the essay, and then I would look at their transcript. So for me, that college essay is such a great opportunity to make a strong first impression. So I work with students to draw out those essay topics. Or what are we going to talk about? What are you passionate about? And sometimes it might be 2 or 3 ideas because they can't decide. I work with a lot of students that have ADHD and many different learning differences. So I like to cater the essay to what might work with them best and how we approach it. So step 1 is picking a topic or 2 or 3. Step 2 is creating some bullet points together underneath each topic about what they might want to talk about. Because picking a topic is not the hard part. Actually, drafting the essay is the hard part. And then I usually tell them, why don't you just write the first paragraph? And then let's talk about that together. So writing a paragraph can be a lot less daunting than having to write an entire draft of an essay. So I think that kind of helps them baby step into the process a little bit. Sometimes they write the first paragraph and they say, you know what, this doesn't feel like the right topic. And then we switch to the next one and see what might work for them. But at the end of the day, it's important that the student share something about themselves because that's what the admissions committee is looking for. Is it well written? And did I learn something about the student? So as I've read so many essays, I have seen some common topics that I read over and over again. So if a student picks that topic, I will try to either steer them in a different direction. So because I want your essay to stand out, or we stay with that topic if they want it and try to find a different way, a different approach on it. And I'll give you an example. This year I had many students want to write about music. That has become a very popular topic. So I have 3 students I'm working with that are writing about music. One ended up writing about how he's used music to connect with his parents and his family because he did not have a strong relationship with his parents. I have another student who is a piano player and she hit a plateau. So she's talking about how she overcame that plateau and that challenge and how she's going to use that skill set in college. And then the third student I have is in marching band, and his band went to Europe this summer to play across the countries. And he ended up writing an essay about how music helped him connect with people in different countries, even though they didn't speak the same language. So same topic, and we all started in the same place, but we ended up helping them all take different paths on it and make unique and different essays.
It seems like your experience in admissions really helps guide that.
For me, I've read so many of them that sometimes I have felt frustrated in the past, and I'm like, okay, the student just taught me a lot about a topic or told me a lot about a different person that I didn't actually learn anything about them. So that really is always my mission. So when I tell them that 20% about what happened, 80% about why it's important to you, that helps them kind of get in a mindset. And then I also have a kind of a layout of 5 different steps of writing the essay, the intro, the, what happened, what you realized. And I give them all this Google Doc that I share with them to help brainstorm and then also help them lay out the essay and write it. And I think that helps them, especially if they're feeling intimidated about getting started. The most important thing is starting early on it so that you have time to actually develop it and write it in the best way possible. I usually start working with students on their college essay, writing it formally, at the end of May or early June, as soon as they get out of school. So I don't want them to be writing this while they're trying to also write papers for school. There's too many competing priorities. I want them to be able to concentrate on this and really make it be as strong as it can be.
That makes sense. Thank you, Renee. One of the questions we often get from parents is whether or not to disclose ADHD or a learning difference in their essay. What do you think?
I do, as I mentioned earlier, I do work with a lot of students that have ADHD, have many different learning differences. And so my recommendation really is to do what feels best for you. And I will talk that through with the student. First, families and students should know that disclosing this is something that will never be held against you in the admissions process. It's just another factor of your background and information about you that they can take into consideration if you choose to disclose it. It's very much a personal preference, but I will talk through with the students the pros and cons of doing that and make sure they feel confident if they do decide to move forward with that. There is actually a couple different places in the application where if you are talking about the common application, where you can disclose that, whether it's in the essay or in additional information. And so my recommendation is often, if you are going to disclose it, put it in the challenges and circumstances or the additional information box so that you can also use your essay to talk about another topic. And that way you're using as many places as possible to share information about you. As a past admissions officer, from my view, if you ask me that question, should you disclose it? My answer would be, it's very helpful to have that information, and admissions offices use it as an explanation of different things, not as an excuse. So it might explain why you took or did not take certain classes like foreign languages, things along those lines. And if you are going to provide the information, my recommendation is to provide as much detailed information as possible. What's really helpful for admissions offices to know is, what date were you diagnosed? If that was in 2nd grade, it's very different than if you were diagnosed in 11th grade. And what types of things have you done since your diagnosis to tackle any challenges you may have? And what's your plan for going forward? How confident do you feel that you can be successful in college? So crafting that type of answer and putting it in an application, I think is very helpful to an admissions office.
Wonderful. Thank you, Renee. And also I wanted to mention, we have an ebook that I think is just incredibly helpful. If you have a child with ADHD, it's called Capable and College Bound, an ADHD friendly roadmap to college admission success. And you can get that by going to ectutoring.com/college-ebook, and it will be sent to your email. And we'll try to put that URL in the chat too. I'll mention it again at the end. Okay, Renee, let's talk a little bit about testing, because when we started out, we talked about grades and test scores. So when it comes to the SAT and the ACT, how can testing help students at this point?
There are a lot of questions around SATs and ACTs right now, especially with a lot of changes that have happened recently with the ACT, which I know we're going to cover as well. There's definitely times when submitting testing can be a positive addition to an application. If there's a student who has lower grades day to day, but they've done well on their standardized testing, it can really show potential and ability to succeed. And then if there's also a student who's strong day to day and has also done well on testing, it's a second indication that they can do well in college. So when we're looking at standardized testing for students, I work with each student that I'm working with to look at their test scores and then each college that's on their list to make a decision about whether they should submit test scores to that college. So it isn't always a blanket, yes, we're going to submit test scores, or no, we aren't going to submit test scores. It is more often, yes, you should submit test scores to these 6 schools, and no, you shouldn't submit them to these 3 schools, depending on what the average test scores are for that school. So once students have all their testing complete, we'll sit down and have a meeting together to go through that for each of their schools and make my recommendations, and then make sure they feel comfortable with that. Because sometimes the students may say, you know, I've worked really hard, I really want to submit these. Or more often than not, Ian, they'll say, I don't want to submit my test scores. But when I show them where they fall within the middle 50% of the schools, they realize that they actually are a nice addition to their application. So that kind of just takes a conversation and data analysis. So we make sure everybody feels comfortable about the decision.
You know, a lot has changed with the SAT and the ACT, Renee, more recently, and the ACT has come out with this new version. So I thought we'd take a minute just to talk about the tests and also talk a little bit about, you know, when a student has additional time, for example, like time and a half, which way should they go? So I'll start out by just talking a little bit about both tests. The SAT, the test is half of it is math and half of it is reading and writing. And it is adaptive, which kids are used to in Fairfax County, meaning they take the first module, and if they do a good job on the math section, for example, the next section is a little bit harder. Or if they don't do so well, the next section is a little bit easier. So the ACT doesn't have an adaptive feature, only the SAT has that. What's different about the SAT is that it is a more complex test, meaning that when kids are reading the questions, sometimes they have to ask, what does that mean? The language that they use sometimes is a little bit trickier than the ACT. So for that reason, with the SAT, this new digital version, sometimes kids say, you know, this felt harder than like the ACT. On the other hand, because we live in the Mid-Atlantic region and because the SAT has such a stronghold, meaning that kids have kind of grown up taking the PSAT, they've had a couple of options to take the PSAT. So when it goes to taking the SAT, they feel like, well, I kind of already know this test, so I'm just going to go in the direction of the SAT. And that's perfectly fine. Sometimes, though, kids say, oh, my PSAT scores, they weren't great at all. Like, I'll take the SAT, but I also want to look to see if maybe the ACT is an option for me. And so the ACT is a different test. It's just changed last month. So now it is a digital format, but what's different is that the test used to be really, really fast paced. So you had to go through everything very quickly. So if you had extra time, and this was the test for you, is like the fastest is taken away. But now they've really slowed it down so that there's more time per question. But a lot of kids still report that the questions feel more like school. They feel like the questions are a tiny bit easier. Both tests are about the same length, about 2 hours and 24 minutes or so. And you can get lots of information on both tests and which might be best for your child on our website. And you can find that at ectutoring.com/test-prep. And we have lots of information also on accommodations too. Renee, anything you want to add about both of these tests?
One important note is that colleges do not prefer one over the other. Either one is completely fine, and you know, certainly you can choose whichever one fits best for you or your student. And do you want to touch base too on when is the right time to do test prep?
Yeah, I was just thinking that, when should your child take the test? And typically what we see is that we do a lot of test prep for both tests, but typically kids will ideally, in a perfect world, prep between the summer, just after finishing their sophomore year and right before starting their junior year. That would be ideal. That doesn't always happen because they can also prep through their junior year, but typically they'll take it at least once in the fall and maybe again in the winter and perhaps again in the spring. So generally the framework for timing is in the fall and then again in the winter or the spring. But you want to take it at least twice because tests are super scored. And that means like if you take the SAT twice, you get this super score where they take your best reading and your best math and they put it together. And now your score is a lot better than it was when you just, may have done not as well on one section over the other before. So super scoring is really valuable to kids. And that's why you want to take a test at least twice. Renee, anything else you want to follow up with?
No, I absolutely agree. I love the test prep summer between sophomore and junior year, as long as the student has completed Algebra 2. I think that is the perfect time to do it because you, again, don't have those competing priorities of your schoolwork as well. I did see a number of students take another set of SATs in fall of their senior year as well. And I'll tell you that has been very stressful for those students. So I love the idea of starting fall of junior year, taking them again in the spring, and then making that decision about whether you need to take them again and how you should test prep. But I agree. I think test prep works out amazing for students. I personally recommend one-on-one test prep as opposed to a group setting. I think that really allows a student to concentrate on what they need best instead of just getting some general information about test prep.
Yeah, especially if the student has ADHD or a learning disability, ideally it needs to be really customized for their needs.
I agree.
All right, so let's go back into the college search and talk about match versus fit, Renee. And then we're going to talk about a balanced list and we will wrap up and go to Q&A. So if you have a question, this is a great time to throw it in there.
So now we're moving on to the college list and how do we create that and what should it look like? There's two categories here that I talk with students about, match and versus fit. So I usually tell them I'll work on the match part and suggest schools to them that I think are a good match. This means that it aligns well with the student's academic profile, their GPA, their test scores, their coursework, and how for students who have been admitted in the past. So really thinking about having a wide variety of schools, but making sure the schools on the list match what you are looking for and match your academic profile. And then there's fit. Fit is something the student has to determine. So I can provide lists of schools, but I don't typically know the student well enough to know if it's a perfect fit for them. This is really thinking about like a student's personal preferences, their learning styles, their values, their goals. What do they want out of campus culture? The size of the schools, the location, diversity, support services, all these things that kind of make up if it's a good fit for you. And I always encourage students to do a couple things. One is give yourself time for research because research is really what takes the time up in the college search process. I can provide lists of schools and we can talk over why I put them on the list, but looking at the websites, taking virtual tours, going to campuses to see them, that's really what helps you build a strong college list because you're putting the schools on the list that you can see yourself at for 4 years. And that does take a little bit of time to do that research. And visiting colleges is very important as well. I can't tell you how many students I've had come back from colleges and say, it was amazing. I could see myself there. Like that's what I'm looking for. And sometimes they come back and say, you know what? I thought it was going to be something, but once I got there, I realized it's not the school for me. And here's why. And then we can kind of piece through that and see if we want to add more schools or remove some schools from their list. But oftentimes they just come back from the visit and say, I don't know, I just felt, it felt right. I like the vibe of the school, things like that. So visiting campus can be important, and figuring out match versus fit. It's really match and fit. You want to have a school that matches well and is also a good fit for you. Oh, you're on mute, Anne. Sorry.
Thank you. When we
Sure.
talk about schools, they really should be part of a balanced list, including reach, target, and likely. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, so this is really something that is really important when you're building your list, is you want to have a balanced list. And that means having schools that are in all three categories of reach, target, and likely. And reach is a category where it is possible that you could be admitted, but academically, your profile is below what they typically admit. And then target schools or match schools, everybody calls them something a little bit different, are schools where your academic profile, your extracurricular activities, your profile is a good fit with those who they have admitted in the past. And then likely schools, they used to call these safety schools. Now we call them likely schools. Likely schools are schools where your profile exceeds what they typically admit. So my recommendation to students is to have between 8 and 12 schools on their list. I have many students with more schools than that. I have a few students that have less schools than that. But we want to make sure that you have schools in all three of these categories. And I'll tell you why that's important. First of all, it maximizes your options. You want to have a balanced list to make sure that when all the admissions offers have come out next spring, you have lots of options to be choosing from, and you are in the driver's seat on where you will end up. It also really reduces stress. And that is important because you have some schools you're likely to be admitted into, so you're going to have those options. And it can also maximize financial aid and scholarship. So the schools that are match and likely schools, you are typically receiving higher scholarship offers from those. So it definitely can make an impact there. And it's also realistic planning. I like to have conversations with students. If all of their schools on their list are all reach schools, I want to have that conversation upfront and early, because I want them to go into this with realistic expectations about where they might be admitted. I don't want any sort of heartbreaking scenario in the March of their senior year when they haven't been admitted to any of the schools on their list.
Great points, Renee. Thank you for that. So let's talk a little bit about a plan. Why is that important?
Plans are extremely important. So when I am assigned a student, or I start working with a student, I make a plan from the day we work together to November 1st of their senior year. That's typically the early decision and early action deadline for most schools. So we make a plan about how to break up what needs to be done in smaller increments. This reduces stress all around. That is always my goal. Have a clear plan, manageable steps, avoid last minute scrambles. Really proud to say this morning, the day before November 1st deadline, I only had 2 students sending me essays this morning to review. That means all the students that I have been working with, all of their work is done and they are either submitted or set to go. That is how you reduce stress as part of the college application process. It also helps because you can keep track of deadlines and requirements. Every school requires something different. It has become a very complicated process. And so by starting early and making a plan, you can kind of lay out what the deadlines are and what needs to be done for each school, so you have it there on time. Having a plan, also, the biggest thing is it improves the quality of your application. You have time to revise essays. You have time to craft a compelling narrative. You have time to explore schools. So you're making strategic choices and presenting a really strong, authentic application.
Are you helping juniors with that plan right now?
Oh, yes. Many juniors. So I have students 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th, so all the way through. But juniors right now, we are really diving in to building college lists, what needs to be done. Will we do any visits this fall? If not, planning for the spring. I love to have a college list done around May 1st for students. So we know what we have going into the summer. Typically, May of junior year, I will request a family meeting so we can talk over what the list looks like. Do we need to make any changes, additions, things like that? But yes, absolutely. Working with students, juniors right now about college lists, and also talking about their extracurricular activities, what they might want to be getting involved in next, and also their summer plans for next summer.
Awesome. Thanks, Renee. You know, there's almost 4,000 2- and 4-year colleges in the United States. So I know you and I are a firm believer that there is a college for everyone.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, the college landscape, it's diverse, it's inclusive. Every student can find some place that is a good fit for them. If you're a high achiever looking for a competitive university, there's something. If you're a student looking for a smaller school with a nurturing environment, a liberal arts school, you want hands-on and you want a technical school, there's so many different choices out there. And I'm happy to suggest lots of good suggestions to students as they're trying to build that list that's right for them.
Thank you, Renee. And we put everything together for you in checklists. And I know we've talked a lot about what to do at certain grade levels, but we've laid it all out for you, what to do in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. And you can get this on our website again at ectutoring.com/college-counseling. And that will also be emailed to you. So Renee, let's wrap up and then get to Q&A, but tell us a little bit about the programs that you have and that all of our other counselors do to work with kids.
Sure. So I work with students one-on-one through the whole college search process, as do the other counselors at Educational Connections. We all really like working with students of all ages as early as possible, because when I do meet with students a little bit earlier on, it helps me build relationships with them and get to know them a little bit better and navigate them through the college search process. And that might mean starting with exploring different majors, as I said, not really going to colleges right away, but talking about their interests and what they're passionate about and building their extracurricular activities and encouraging them to take on leadership roles, so that by the time we start talking seriously about college in 10th, 11th, 12th grade, we've done a lot of that groundwork and can really lean into the actual college search and application process.
Awesome. Thank you. And we're happy to talk to you. My team and I talk to parents every day about what's going on with their child and help make recommendations. We can share a little bit about what we do, learn about what's going on with your child, and help you on your way. So you can scan this QR code to set up a call if you'd like, or visit our website at EC Tutoring to learn more. All right, Renee, thank you so much for being my guest and for sharing so much great information with everyone today. Amal, I'd love to bring you back and go to the Q&A.
Yes, thank you so much both for the information was shared. We do have a lot of questions. Well, we'll start with, will having a full scholarship already available through state-sponsored disabled veterans status help a student athlete to get to the school they want to go, or should we temper expectations when applications are submitted?
I believe you're saying you have a scholarship that is not based on academics. So yes, just because a student has a full scholarship to a college does not mean they will automatically be admitted. They still have to be admissible to the college and be able to show that they can be successful in the program there. So I would say you want to be thoughtful of your expectations and make sure you still build a college list that is realistic.
Thank you. What type of volunteering would you recommend? What type of volunteering will stand out?
That is a great question, because there's so many different opportunities available, and I will tell you, it can be anything. I've had students who have volunteered in their own neighborhood and helped some elderly neighbors. I've had students who have really committed themselves to like worldwide organizations. So it can really be anything from A to Z. I tell the student to typically find something they're interested in and something that they want to commit to. So I would prefer that they do something for a year or 2 years instead of doing for an hour their sophomore year. Like really kind of pick something that you're interested in. That might mean volunteering for 2 or 3 things first before you find the one that you're really passionate about.
Thank you. Where can I find the personality test?
We actually do, those are called through AchieveWorks. We use them through software that we have at Educational Connections. And do you know of one that someone could use independently?
Yeah, you can go online and just type in personality tests. There's things like strength finders. They don't give you a major, but they can help kids determine, what am I naturally good at? And from there, it helps kids certainly to explore things that are related to that skill set.
Okay, thank you. What tips do you have for students who are learning English as an additional language interested in applying to college?
Well, if students are learning English as an additional language, I would recommend that they start their application process early, their college search early, so they can investigate a number of different schools and make sure that it's the right fit for them. And then as well, ask as many questions as possible. Reach out to schools, meet with different college officials, work with a college counselor to make sure that you're finding a school that has the support system and any classes that you may need when you enroll.
Thank you. Are students chances hurt by not applying early action?
That's a great question. So right now, if we say early action is sort of the new regular decision. So the chances are not hurt if a student doesn't apply early action. I do recommend any student that I'm working with apply early action if possible. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons for that is that I think it does say to a school a little bit, I have my act together and I'm able to apply early and get everything in and on time. We do see in admissions that the regular decision applicant pool is, we see lower admit rates for that than we do for early action. So early decision has the highest admit rates, early action has the next highest typically, and then regular decision has the lowest admit rates. So colleges typically do read applications in order of notification plan. So they'll read all the early decision students first, and then the early action, and then the regular decision. So for some very selective schools or selective programs, there may be more limited spaces available through regular decision. But for many schools and many programs, that is completely fine and there are still spaces available.
Thank you. Should kids prepare for PST, and when should they take it? And also, well, it's another question related to the other tests. So if you can reply to that first, and then we go to the other. Thank you.
So I do have students who have done prep for the PSAT. Typically, students do not do formal test prep for PSAT, but I do actually have a student right now who is doing it. She's a very anxious test taker, and her family thought it might be best for her to do some test prep before the PSAT. So she would go in with as much information and feel as empowered as possible when she took that test. Typically, students will take it sophomore year, and then many will take it again junior year for national merit consideration.
Thank you. So is it okay to take both SAT and ACT and use best score, or do the schools see all scores? So if you do poorly on one, it shows anyway.
That's a great question. Yes, absolutely. You can take both of them and you can select which scores you would like reported to the schools to consider.
Okay, thank you. So when using the Common App, how do you select which schools get test scores?
Sure. So when you fill out the Common App, there is a place to add your testing scores in if you would like to self-report them. And most colleges, not all, but I would probably say around 75% of colleges will take self-reported scores from your Common App. If a school is test optional and allows you that choice, whether you want to have your test scores considered or not, they will have a specific question underneath their school specific questions that asks you that. So you can indicate whether you would like your test scores considered or not as part of the application process when you fill out the school-specific questions in the Common App.
Okay, there is a question. Do you have a format or template for the high school resume you can share?
I actually do have a couple that I use, but I think every college counselor has a different one. So I have two that they're just ones that I have sort of created on my own. I would recommend students go to like Canva. Many of my students use Canva to create their resumes. And, of course, if I'm working with a student, I have a couple that I share, but I think every college counselor uses a little bit different. I don't know that mine are the best ones that I have. They're just resumes that I have used as templates for students in the past if they're struggling to create one.
Okay, thank you. Another question, is there a risk that resume, teacher recommendation, and essay will list the same things?
Sometimes they do, yes, and that's okay. So the activity section of the Common App may list very similar things that the resume does, and the teacher may touch on them, and that is okay as well. Within the Common App, you only have 150 characters to describe your activity. And that's one of the reasons students prefer resume as well, because then they are able to highlight certain activities that they want to expand on even farther. But it is very common for it to be very similar activities through those three lists.
You, there is an expectation that to take as many as advanced placements classes to boost GPA, but what if you want to take classes that are not weighted? How do you balance expectations and what look better for college?
Yes, many students will take classes that are not weighted, whether it be that they're taking the general level class offered at their school, or they want to take some classes for exploration, like perhaps an accounting class or a drama class or an art class. Those are not typically weighted. The most important part is that a student has a strong academic foundation. So they're taking the 5 main areas: math, English, history, science. And those courses are taken every year, including senior year. You don't want to have a senior year that has all elective classes. You want to make sure that you're continuing on your academics, but it's absolutely fine to take classes that are not weighted as well. Colleges not only look at your overall GPA, weighted or unweighted, depending on what your school offers, but they literally look in at your transcript and see exactly what classes you have taken, in what order, where your strengths and weaknesses fall. So it is a very holistic process. It's not just a GPA.
Perfect, thank you. If the student is introvert and being the president of the club is not his priority, how then admission evaluates this leadership?
That's one of my jobs as a college counselor, is to help those students present strong applications. I work with a lot of students who are introverted and a little bit quieter. And so we will sit down and kind of talk together about what they have done and how to present themselves best. I'm working with a student right now who has a physical disability. And his concern was, I'm not able to be involved in a lot of activities because of my disability. So how do I show leadership? How will I demonstrate that? So we talked about a volunteer experience that he had. And even though he wasn't physically able to help out, he was able to take a leadership role and help determine who was going to take on what tasks, help reorganize work when one task was harder than they thought it was. So he ended up writing this beautiful supplemental essay on how he was able to take this leadership role within a volunteer opportunity, even though he wasn't physically able to help. So there's always different paths and different ways that we can help a student shine. It does not have to be a traditional position within a role. I also have a number of students who may play sports or maybe in marching band for all 4 years of high school, and may never be the team captain, may never be the section leader. But I have always viewed that commitment to being in something for all 4 years as leadership. Once you have been involved in something for a number of years, you're naturally seen as a leader, whether you are in a formal position or not. So highlighting that as part of the application is a great idea as well.
We have thank you. What is the difference between early action and early decision?
Early decision is binding, meaning that if you are admitted to that school, you are expected to enroll. You can only apply to one school as an early decision school. Early action is a notification plan or an admissions plan where you apply earlier. Typically, it's November 1st, November 15th are the typical deadlines for early action. But you are able to apply to many schools as an early action candidate, not just one. And you do not need to enroll there if you are admitted. You're simply applying earlier. You will receive your admission decision earlier. You typically receive your scholarship and financial aid offers earlier, but you still have that same deadline of May 1st for your enrollment deposit.
You does taking a vocational class hurt the chances of getting into college?
Does taking a what type of class? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part.
Vocational classes.
Oh, absolutely not. Many students will take vocational classes. Some students are taking them in high school, workshop, woodworking, metal crafting, automotive. So absolutely, many students will pursue that. And I am actually working with a student right now who is pursuing four-year colleges, two-year colleges, and trade school as well. So we can certainly talk about those options as well if a student is interested in that type of a path.
Thank you. Well, we still have a lot of questions, but we have few minutes to go through them, so I'll try to get as much as we can. So is the job preferable to extracurriculum activities?
I wouldn't say I prefer one over the other, but I do think they carry equal weight. So it would be completely fine with me if a student had a part-time job, because typically those can take up just as much time, if not more time, than extracurricular activities. So I think that's fine, but I wouldn't say one carries a weight over another.
Do kids need to pick their major in high school, or can they do general studies their first 2 years to give them more time to decide?
We are seeing a decrease in the number of colleges that offer undecided programs, but yes, there certainly are many schools that still offer undeclared or undecided programs for students to enroll in if they don't know what they want to major in. I'm also seeing an increase in the number of schools who are offering undeclared programs within different topic areas. For example, an undeclared engineering program. If you know you want engineering, but you don't know what type yet. Undeclared sciences, undeclared liberal arts even I've seen. So yes, you certainly can still attend school as an undeclared student. I would say more students currently are kind of leaning towards knowing what they want to do and have done that exploration. So you're seeing more of that. But I work with a number of students who don't know exactly what they want to major in and then we'll lean in. There are a lot of schools currently that are kind of encouraging you to pick a major by the end of the first year to keep graduation rates on time because that has become very important. You want to graduate on time. The schools are considering that as well. But certainly there are many students who will come in undecided and also many students who will go in and decided major and change their mind while they're in college as well. We all know that that happens too.
Thank you. Is going to Nova a good choice and transfer into a 4 years school there? They're like junior years. Is that a good choice?
Yes, I think that's a great choice. There's many students who will choose to go to Nova or a community college in their area and then look to transfer. It might be after the first year. It might be after receiving an associate's degree. I was also a transfer counselor for many years. So I've worked with a lot of students who have transferred from a 2-year school to a 4-year school. There's also often articulation agreements, guaranteed admissions programs that you can do through a 2-year school to the 4-year schools in your area. So lots of options to explore there. This can be a great option financially if you want to look at a community college. It's also a great option for students who maybe have not done as well in high school as they would have hoped. Many times colleges, if you're applying as a transfer student, will not consider your high school transcript once you've completed a year of college level work. So it's kind of a great opportunity to wipe the slate clean if you want to, and then show at college level work what you are capable of.
Okay, our last question. If most colleges make decisions prior to March and AP exams are taken in May for classes taken senior year, then would it be better to have more AB classes junior year and then maybe focus on dual certificate credit courses senior year?
Well, I will tell you, I always encourage taking the highest level class possible, as I said, but many students are not ready to take an AP class until their senior year, and that's okay. When you apply, you can report your AP exam scores on your application, so they will take that into consideration. But to be honest, what many colleges want to see is that you've actually taken the class and how you've done in the class, not only that's actual score at the end. So I think it's fine to continue taking those classes your senior year. Many colleges, colleges are used to not getting those exam scores until students are enrolling the following year. So definitely still take AP classes your senior year, IB classes. And if dual enrollment classes work out as well, that's completely fine too. I just encourage you to take as many advanced level classes as you can and challenge yourself. But that might also mean honors classes for some students. It doesn't necessarily have to mean AP classes.
Thank you so much for all the information shared and answering most of the questions that we had. And if you still have some question was not answered today, please reach out to the Family Resource Center at frc@fcps.edu. Also, we have gotten some question about resources about scholarships and the personality test, and you can find a lot of resources as well for free tests and Naviance through the Student Schoology page. And we do have some personnel at school setting that can help families, like the career and specialists and their counselors, and a lot of resources on their Naviance. So please make sure that your students are checking that and check that with them. And if you need more resources, we can share with you any resources needed or any books from the FRC. Let us know, and we hope you have a nice day. Thank you all.
Bye, everybody. Happy Halloween.
Thank you. Have a great
Thanks,
day.
Renee. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.